welcome to the 2021 National Promise Zone Federal Convening. I do want to take a brief second to thank our planning committee. This is a partnership between the Promise Zones as well as all of our federal agencies, especially our CLs, our community liaisons. We've worked collaboratively with many others to make this day possible. So I want to take this opportunity to thank those who have participated to make this 2021 National Promise Zone what it is today. With that being said, we want to go ahead and move right into our open remarks with the U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary, Tom Vilsack.
Coalition of Promise Zones' second annual virtual federal convening. Now in the second half of their 10-year designation, Promise Zones continue to deliver proven results by encouraging collaboration between the federal government, community organizations, the private sector, and state and local governments. I want to start off today by saying thank you to all of you for your continued dedication to this incredible work. Promise Zones are an amazing example of what is truly possible when communities, partners, and government come together. Over time, you've had to adapt to changes in your communities, changes in our economy, changes in leadership, and you've done so with grace and resilience, never losing sight of your mission. I was fortunate to be there when the first round was announced by President Obama in 2014, when I first served as Agriculture Secretary. And in 2016, I had the opportunity to launch a new Promise Zone in Roosevelt Roads, Puerto Rico. All 22 Promise Zones have worked in partnership with the federal government to show what is possible when we work together. And I'm certainly proud that USDA has been a long-term partner of the Promise Zones, and we're honored to be part of this conference today. Across rural, tribal, and urban areas, Promise Zones have tied together through a common thread: the belief that a child's zip code should never, ever determine their destiny. Promise Zones seek to improve the quality of life for all people of a persistently poor area, a city, a neighborhood, or a census tract through a collective approach: economic development, education, housing, crime reduction, and health. And it's the folks on the ground working on this initiative who understand best that with the right tools, we can ensure an equal shot at success no matter where any American may live. Your work is important to the Biden-Harris administration, and this administration takes place-based initiatives seriously in advancing a number of priorities. Part of the work will be making sure that federal agencies work with communities strategically to support their local vision and to make federal programs easier to understand and access, particularly for underserved and disadvantaged communities. President Biden has made a commitment to resourcing prosperity, particularly in rural America, which provides an important opportunity to support a new whole-of-government approach to invest in rural communities across the country, an approach that is equity-based and focuses on improved social, economic, and health outcomes in support of a community's unique assets, challenges, and opportunities. The President's budget calls for $32 million to support this critical place-based work at USDA. And you're doing the hard work of strengthening partnerships across our communities to enact sustainable, community-led change. For us, this is an important moment to improve the way government directly supports that change, particularly in this time where the pandemic has caused enormous health and economic stress across our country. As we work to provide relief and help families put food on the table through the American Rescue Plan, the administration is also focused on expanding testing and vaccination opportunities and taking science-driven steps to support the communities hit hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. At USDA, we recently announced the availability of $500 million in grants to help rural hospitals and local communities increase access to COVID-19 vaccines and testing, medical supplies, telehealth, and food assistance, as well as to support the construction and renovation of rural healthcare facilities. President Biden is also putting equity at the center of the agenda with a whole-of-government approach to embed racial justice across federal agencies, policies, and programs. At USDA, we're taking bold, historic action to root out generations of systemic racism, to deeply integrate equity in decision-making and policy-making, and to build equitable systems and programming inclusive of all employees and all customers. When it comes to addressing the climate change crisis, we're also focused on taking swift action while creating good paying jobs, supporting communities in their recovery from extreme weather events, and building community resilience to mitigate the impacts. This includes putting food, agriculture, and rural communities at the heart of this administration's efforts to tackle climate change. And finally, when it comes to an economic recovery from the pandemic and investing in the future, we are very focused on building back better for American families. The President's Build Back Better agenda will reduce taxes and lower costs for working families, address prescription drug costs, healthcare, childcare, and other expenses that eat into household expenses and income, building resilient supply chains in critical sectors like agriculture and creating jobs and raising wages is an important component of our Build Back Better agenda. Additionally, President Biden has proposed in his American Jobs Plan a $500 billion rural partnership program, which is now being considered as part of the reconciliation bill. If passed, this rural prosperity program would provide billions of dollars of flexible resources to create jobs, promote economic diversification, and support infrastructure projects in rural areas. Importantly, this program puts rural communities in the driver's seat by supporting locally defined community economic development projects, plans, and organizations. The Rural Partnership Program would focus on networks, like the networks you all have established in Promise Zones, where you have continued to be able to bring new partners and strengthen the ability of local organizations. This Rural Partnership Program would be an amazing opportunity to continue and evolve your good work and support collaboration around economic development goals. If it passes, it will be the single most transformational program in the last 20 years at USDA. This week, the National Coalition of Promise Zones has arranged for you to hear directly from the source of agencies like the Economic Development Administration, the Small Business Administration, the Departments of Education and Health and Human Services, as well as my own USDA. This is a great opportunity for us to share the federal resources available for partnering with your work and to further highlight our commitment to revitalizing American communities. Once again, thank you for all of your great work in the past, now, and into the future in addressing very complex issues that we all face today. Your work truly makes a difference in improving the quality of life for so many Americans and helping to ensure every child growing up here has the opportunity to succeed.
All right, back to you, Silas.
Appreciate that. Thank you for that video as well as that recording that we were able to receive from Secretary Vilsack. We are now going to move into the next phase of our opening remarks with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We are privileged to have the Assistant Deputy Secretary, Michele Perez, here with us today to provide an open remark comment for the 2021 National Promise Zone Coalition. Assistant Deputy Perez, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Silas. Hi, everyone. I am so happy to be here. I can't tell you, a week full of heavy hitters. I can only imagine how excited each of you must be. I know that this is a virtual setting, and for many of you who work so much on the ground and place-based, and being with people, around people, in the midst of community is like what gets you excited. So I know that it's challenging and difficult to be able to do this in a virtual environment, but I am so honored and privileged to share this space with you today. I can only tell you that following up on Secretary Vilsack's comments, there's a heck of a charge in front of us, and the work that you all do, the work that you all are pushing for against all odds in the midst of so much challenge and difficulty for our communities right now, everywhere across the country. I think it's important for us to just sort of ground ourselves and really just appreciate all that you've accomplished, all that we will continue to accomplish, and the commitment and the fortitude that we all hold together in this space to drive on and into this work. So I just want to celebrate you and reflect on how grateful there are people like you and your organizations that are really making a difference in people's lives in a real, practical, and meaningful way. It probably can't be said enough, but I just wanted to reiterate that for you just one more time to start off this session. for me right now, this moment is transformational for a whole lot of ways. I worked, for what it's worth, I have 21 years of federal government experience and also worked in nonprofits. And one of the places in which I worked was at the Department of Veterans Affairs, another noble mission in support of those who have served. And I learned a terminology that I hadn't learned before. It's called VUCA. And for those of you who have prior federal service or prior military service specifically, I think it's interesting because VUCA, V-U-C-A, stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This is the environment in which we are walking into every single day. And the communities who depend upon us are asking for our assistance so that they can actualize for themselves a future that is both dignified, that has the respect and the recognition of the fact that they can make choices that will help to bring them to a place where they can contribute more fully, feel fulfilled in their communities, and really bring along the community with them to a place that recognizes, not to sound corny, but the promise of what the work that we're doing today is, right? You knew it was coming. So all that to say, it is personally meaningful to me because I recognize fully that the environment in which we're doing our work is a recognition of service that must be trauma informed, that must recognize the crisis in many ways and the intersectional crises that people are feeling, that they are struggling through, and the value of federal and local partnerships mean in the lives of the communities that you serve. It actually has meaning, it has value, and you translate that on a day-to-day basis. I joined the federal government in 1999 during the Clinton administration as a community builder fellow. I don't even know if you've heard of that term, but it was inspiring to me because what it meant was I was jumping into federal service for a temporary period of time because I was from the community and I knew all the things that government was not doing for us. And this gave us an opportunity, particularly from where I was coming from South Miami, Florida, working in teen pregnancy prevention, we're a local Boys and Girls Club, trying to ensure that kids could see a future for themselves and could really track to what they could realize for themselves. In coming into the government, it was so exciting because here was a means by which I could provide information to the government about what it felt like on the ground, experiencing those services. And conversely, I could take the information that I was learning within government and bring it back to community. And in that way, that sort of relationship that you all serve in very real ways, I think this is for me why promise zones are so valuable, so important, and so special, because it continues this very important and instrumental relationship that happens. If you don't have the people that are connecting these systems that are intended to provide care, then they are not recognizing or acknowledging the individual personalities of the communities, that it's different, that you can't just do a one-size-fits-all, that you have to know who your community partners are. You have to establish trust with those community partners. And at the end of the day, that we rely upon your relationships with those community partners. We rely upon your knowledge of community, your knowledge of where there is greatest need to help us make our programs most valuable. So I'll go into just the deepness of what and the richness of what we're doing now with COVID-19. HUD and HHS partnered together to recognize that particularly people who were HUD assisted, the demographic of the people who are dependent on HUD for support for housing, and that housing was in fact healthcare, and that it was a social determinant of health. We wanted to make sure that people were aware of and how to access and had confidence around vaccinations. And so, simply HUD and HHS, the federally qualified health center, saying that we're partnering to develop and deliver real strategies to bring vaccinations to the communities, that wasn't going to make a difference if it wasn't for promise zones. And I think one of the most exciting parts of my arrival at HUD was an entire webinar that the promise zones were partnered with HUD in identifying how to reduce infection and transmission and mortalities in communities that were in need, that identified food insecurity and transportation needs for people and communities in most dire situations, and also talked about employment opportunities and small business activities to focus on recognizing that the crisis was hitting at multiple levels. It's the promise zone to really make those connections. And I just wanted to remind us all that this road that we're on requires far more work. We've only just begun to do this work. And for many of you, I know it's been a lifetime of service. So I really don't even want to say that as if to say that there hasn't been a lot accomplished, but it's only in recognition of, in this moment, we know how much more has yet to be done. And so with that, I say, the initiatives right now that we're looking at HUD, that we're going to continue to call upon you because of the enormity of the challenge ahead, really goes to House America, what you'll hear more about, a recognition that we need to have, in the same way that President Biden made reference to the moonshot for cancer. It's so too with homelessness. The reality that with the eviction moratorium coming to an end, that there are a whole host of families today, individuals and families, who are at risk of losing their rental properties. And that is an entirely different and equally important population as those folks who have been experiencing chronic homelessness, that we need to use all of the tools available to private sector, public sector, local government, and the federal government to really understand what the issue is and to target and tailor solutions to communities to have a housing first premise, first and foremost. And then secondly, ensuring that we're building not just new housing units, but also rehoming those who are in need of housing support. The emergency housing vouchers is an incredible opportunity for those that are chronically home, and particularly for those who are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. When we're saying during the COVID pandemic, you have to be home to be safe, when we were on lockdowns, for so many, being home was not being safe, and the recognition that there has to be a meaningful path for assistance that people who are in need can access, not just theoretically, but actually be able to receive. That's important. And finally, the partnership that HUD and the U.S. Department of Treasury are engaged in with the emergency rental assistance protection. That is an area of work that we know some communities are doing really well at disbursing their rental assistance funds, and there are others who need lots more support. And so where we stand as a collective is in those gaps, in understanding where the problems are and how we can partner in innovative and creative ways to bridge that difference. So the future is exciting. It may not get any more clear. It may not get any more or any less complex. It will continue to be challenging, but this is why we're in this work, I think, because it fulfills and offers meaning to you, to me, to so many of us who've devoted our careers and our lives to doing this work. So thank you. And I hope you have a tremendous week. I look forward to sitting in as many sessions as possible as I can. Back to you, Silas.
Thank you so much, Assistant Deputy Secretary Michele Perez, on behalf of all the Promise Zones and all the planning committee. We are very thankful and grateful that you would take this opportunity to participate with us today. All right, so let's move into the state of the Promise Zones. All right, we have one of our very own from the start to be presenting to us and talking to us about the Promise Zones, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. I don't think there's nobody who might not know Erich Yost, but if you don't, you will be privileged to participate today and learn all the things that have taken place within the zones. I'm a big fan of Erich's, and I'm looking forward to hearing his presentation today. With that being said, if there are any questions during Erich's presentation, please put those in the chat. I will be reviewing those, and we will be looking to answer those after Erich's complete presentation. After that, we will then move on to some welcomings from our Promise Zone. But right now, Erich, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Silas. And thank you so much for having a chance to hear from Secretary Vilsack and also from HUD's ADS, Michele Perez. It's such an honor to follow both of them, to give you a little bit of a journey on where we've been with promozones and where we're going. And so what I wanted to do is kind of take you on a bit of a journey today about the promozone and where we started to kind of where we are today and where there's still opportunities to go in the future. So really the focus here is bringing us together this week around some common threads to talk about the work that we do, the work that our federal partners do, and how we can assist each other. And really to stay grounded in this work of why we ended up having promozones and where promozones can continue to support the efforts of both the local communities, local government, state government, and the federal government. So I'm going to take a little bit of flashback to 2011. So we're going to go back in time a little bit here. And this is the time period when the White House, at the time, the Obama administration came up with the neighborhoods of opportunity. And the Building Neighborhoods of Opportunity was a neighborhood revitalization initiative that really focused on strategies to help residents and develop partnerships around data and building capacity to impact strategy on a local level. And this was also led by the White House Domestic Policy Council, which I know you'll be hearing from as well during this week, along with several other federal partners that will also be during this presentation. The Neighborhood Revitalization Initiative was really focused on helping to develop promozones, and it was grounded in a couple key grants. So the Promise Neighborhood Grant from Department of Education, the Choice Neighborhoods Planning and Implementation Grants from HUD, the Byrne Criminal Justice Innovation Grant from the Department of Justice, along with health center programs from HHS, and of course, our partners at the US Department of the Treasury and their CDFI program. So back in February 15th, 2013, in the State of the Union address, was when President Obama officially announced promozones and talked about the focus of targeting investment in local communities and helping local leaders navigate federal programs to use federal resources more effectively. And in the first round of applications, some of the key things that you want to be aware of and that occurred during the first round of applications was that we've shared that this would be an intensive and layered approach to revitalizing communities and building on those key NRI grants that I had talked about. And so part of the application it resulted in January 8th, 2014 is when the first 5 promozones were announced. And the key goals that were shared at the time were the federal government is investing and partnering with high poverty, urban, rural, and tribal communities to create jobs, increase economic activity, improve educational opportunities, leverage private investment, and reduce violent crime. And talking about how this built off of the president's ladders of opportunities. And in the round 1 application information that was shared and the awards that was shared, it talked about this accountability for clear goals, helping assess resources, partnering with AmeriCorps for National Service members with the AmeriCorps program, and investing in what works along with cutting taxes potentially for businesses. And at that time as well, there was a press release that was released that talked about these same exact goals when the promozones were announced. And what I want to do now is take you on a little bit of the speech in the White House on January 9th, 2014 with President Obama, who was talking about promozones. And this will hopefully give you a good grounding of the initiative.
Well, welcome to the White House, everybody. And that was one of the best introductions I've ever had. So we're so proud of Kiara for the introduction and for sharing your story. And, just so poised. I know Jeff Canada's just out there all excited and proud. So, and I know your mom's proud. I know she is. She should be. Kiara and the rest of these young people grew up in a 97 square block section of Harlem. As a place where the odds used to be stacked against them every single day. Even just graduating from high school was a challenge. But with the help of some very dedicated adults and a program called the Harlem's Children's Zone, they're right on track to go to college. Together, students, teachers, administrators, parents, community, they're changing the odds in this neighborhood. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Changing the odds for every American child so that no matter who they are, no matter where they are born, they have a chance to succeed in today's economy. Now, in my State of the Union address last year, I announced our commitment to identify more communities like these, urban, rural, tribal, where dedicated citizens are determined to make a difference and turn things around, and we challenged them. We said, if you can demonstrate the ability and the will to launch an all-encompassing, all-hands-on-deck approach to reducing poverty and expanding opportunity, we'll help you get the resources to do it. We'll take some resources from some of the programs that we're already doing and concentrate them. We'll make sure that our agencies are working together more effectively. We'll put in, talent to help you plan, but we're also going to hold you accountable and measure your progress. And if you're doing real stuff that is making a difference in the lives of young people like Kiara, then we're going to be there. Your country will help you remake your community on behalf of your kids, family by family, block by block. We call these communities promise zones. They're neighborhoods where we will help local efforts to meet one national goal, that a child's course in life should be determined not by the zip code she's born in, but by the strength of her work ethic and the scope of her dreams. So we're here today to announce the first 5 promise zones in America. And I could not be prouder to be joined by Mayor Erich of Los Angeles and Mayor Michael Nutter of Philadelphia and Councilwoman Ivy Taylor from San Antonio, Chief Gregory Pyle, one of our tribal leaders, and Jerry Rickett from the Kentucky Highlands Investment Corporation. Some of the leaders from these neighborhoods who are helping to make it happen. In the East Side neighborhood of San Antonio, nearly 4 in 10 adults don't have a high school diploma. The violent crime rate is 50% higher than the rest of the city. So schools and community members are focused on getting more kids into pre-K, boosting math and science in high school, and they're putting more cops on foot patrol to make their neighborhoods safer. It's a project worth investing in. In a section of LA that stretches from Pico Union to Hollywood, the population decreased by 13,000 people in just 10 years. So developers are working to build more affordable housing. Technical schools and community colleges are helping more people get the training they need to get jobs. It's a project worth investing in. In Philly, nearly 4 out of every 10 kids lives below the poverty line, and a lot of them are on the west side of the city. So local universities helping connect middle and high school students with mentors to get them ready for college. You've got a supermarket that's being planned that will create jobs and provide healthy food where there's been too little of both. We're going to invest in that. Senator Mitch McConnell's home state of Kentucky. There are communities that have been struggling for decades with shutdowns and layoffs. So they're taking steps, locally initiated, to attract new businesses and create new jobs in new industries. You've got a local college that's stepping up to expand technical training and help more kids get a higher education. Then the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, where up to half of the residents in some areas live in poverty, community leaders are determined to change things. And they're making financing available to help women start their own businesses. They're investing in new water and sewer systems that will make the area more attractive for companies looking to locate there. And they're helping farmers and ranchers create more jobs and more families thereby get access to healthy foods. So these are America's first 5 promise zones. And over the next 3 years, we're going to help launch 20 in all. And each of these communities is designing from the bottom up, not the top down, what it is they think they need. And we're working with them to make that happen. And each of these communities is prepared to do what it takes to change the odds for their kids. We will help them succeed, not with a handout, but as partners with them every step of the way. And we're going to make sure it works. And we're going to hold them accountable to make sure it is making a difference in the lives of kids. that sometimes we talk about this stuff as if we care, and then we don't deliver. We don't follow through. We don't make the effort. It's not sustained. We lose interest. And then we say to ourselves, well, maybe nothing can be done. And we put up with it. And as a consequence, a lot of our kids get lost. And we can't allow that to happen. Now, that's what the promise zones represent. I want more kids to have the chance that Roger got. I want more kids to have the chance this country gave me. We should all want every one of our kids and their families to have a shot at success. If you are willing to dream big and work hard, you should grow up with the same opportunities in life as any other child living in any other place. That's what we're fighting for. That's what America's about. So let's act. Let's make it happen this year. All right? Thank you. God bless you. God bless America.
So with that, I wanted to say thank you all so much for being that sustaining group of people that have kept the work going, for looking at those youth that are in your communities to make sure that we continue to do the work of Promise Zones. You know, in January also of 2014 and in June 2014, there was some critical research that was done by Roz Chetty at Harvard University around opportunity and intergenerational mobility in the United States that really led to a lot of these discussions we're having about Promise Zones and zip codes, and should zip codes determine the outcome in the future for individuals living in certain places. And this research was just very important and essential to the development of Promise Zones. It also led to something that the group at Harvard developed called the Opportunity Atlas. And looking at the Opportunity Atlas and looking at neighborhoods and down to census tract levels, you can see these grim differences between people that are born in certain zip codes next to other zip codes that do not have the same opportunity to excel and achieve. And so that was a big focus of what we were trying to do. And you can look at the more current data too on the Opportunity Atlas as it's been continued to be updated over the years. So Promise Zones really started as this White House initiative, part of the Ladders of Opportunity, and was a place-based initiative. It focused on 5 key goals: creating jobs, increasing economic opportunity, improving educational outcomes, leveraging serious or violent crime, and leveraging private capital, with additional goals that Promise Zones could add, but these were the core Promise Zone goals. And the designees were designated for all of you that are on the line and those that support your communities. These were high need geographies that had high capacity implementers. So a focus group of individuals and organizations that could help these communities succeed in helping them move through their strategic plan and goals. So Promise Zones came with 4 key benefits: federal staff on the ground to help to connect with resources, 5 AmeriCorps Vista members, preferred access and technical assistance from the federal government, and then there was business hiring tax incentives if enacted by Congress. And so the theory of action around these high need, high capacity communities and this federal Promise Zone support was really to give this increased opportunity for residents and to accelerate community revitalization. So we started with actually 12 federal partners and then expanded to 13. The 13th federal partner added was actually the Environmental Protection Agency, with the US Department of Agriculture leading the rural and tribal Promise Zones and HUD leading the urban Promise Zones. The community liaisons were hired at both agencies to be working in the field, working side by side with the communities around areas to help them to participate, educate, manage, and facilitate meetings, troubleshoot, and support the local Promise Zone initiatives. So I want to play one other shorter video back in September 2014 when the second round Promise Zones were announced.
2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of visiting one of the first Promise Zones located in West Philadelphia. I saw how the public and private sectors are coming together to advance common goals. I met with local leaders who are committed to shaping their own destinies and fulfilling their vision for change. I witnessed the community's plan for the future turning into progress in the present. These folks had new hope
for their neighborhood. The best way to ensure that a young person gets ahead is to make sure that she never gets behind in the first place. It's not only education, it's also about housing, it's about jobs, it's about access to technology. Through the Promise Zone initiative, 12 federal agencies are working with local partners to provide comprehensive support to distressed communities. 17, 18 years from now, that we see those young people cross the graduation stage from high school. And then a few years later, we see them cross the stage and receive their college degree. And we see them as the engineers and the entrepreneurs and the teachers and the firefighters here in Philadelphia, making this community a stronger place. We want this hope to reach all communities. We're going to give folks who have been underserved for too long the chance to fulfill their potential.
So then this led to the round 2 applications in September 2014. And one of the things I wanted to point out in the application in 2014 was definitely talking about the fact that these are 10 years, right? That we're looking at the Promise Zone designation expanding and extending as necessary to capture the full term of availability of incentives if needed. And yes, there may be specific benefits that are available to Promise Zones, can vary from year to year, and sometimes more often than annually due to changes in federal agency policies or changes in appropriations and authorizations, there could be different programs that are offered. And of course, over time, we've seen that happen through different administrations and different years. And so just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. Then we went into June 2006, where the round 3 awards were announced, and which was really exciting because we ended up with 22 Promise Zones across the country, 2 more than what was originally envisioned. And you can see here the full map of all of you across the country that were announced in 2016, the 3rd and final round of Promise Zones. In the 2016 frequently asked questions about Promise Zones, there was a question about what's going to happen after the administration changes. And it was just talking about the fact that just 2 years into the first round designation, that we were laying the groundwork for the federal government to help to ensure agencies were equipped to help to Promise Zones. And so what was really critical was talking about the fact that we had HUD and USDA staff that was put in place to make sure that we could continue to help Promise Zones succeed. At that time also, there was an interagency agreement that was issued between several federal partners to help to institutionalize and continue the work of federal agencies working collaboratively across the federal government. Interestingly, about the research time too that was done, one of the first research papers written was in 2014 that talked about Promise Zones and why that initiative is so important of transforming selected zones, but to change how the federal government works in local communities. So this was one of the early research papers in May 2014 that was issued about Promise Zones. Continuing that discussion in 2015, our partners through the Forum for Youth Investments that was funded through the US Department of Education issued a paper called Transforming Government, Transforming Communities. And they also talked about the importance of place-based staff working in strengthening the federal workforce to help Promise Zones. So in 2016, in September 2016, the White House Office of Management and Budget issued a memorandum that's known as M1623, or you could say it's a droid, almost like a C3PO, but it's M1623, that talked about the steps that the federal government was going to take to help Promise Zones optimize resources and provide technical assistance and assist with the Promise Zone initiatives. And then this memorandum also required certain reporting requirements that would occur annually over the designation in regards to offering preference points, deciding where those preference points would be announced and how they'd be announced, and then continuing to identify resources each year that would help Promise Zones. Interestingly, in January 2019, Julian Castro, at the time, the HUD secretary, issued a memorandum to President Obama on his a couple days before he left office that included a report on the HUD urban Promise Zones about leveraging opportunity and highlighting the early results of Promise Zones. So this was one of the first real comprehensive reports that was written by HUD about Promise Zones. In addition, HUD continued to lay out on our website the importance of keeping those resources online as we went through a change in administrations, and keeping the Pramazone overview included in our website. Interestingly, many may not know this, but at the same time, that one of those fourth key benefits was the tax incentives that have been enacted by Congress. So the early legislation that began in actually 2015 and 16 during the Obama administration was to create something called the Investing in Opportunity Act, which was the tax benefits for Pramazones that many of you are more familiar with being is the opportunity zones. But you can see this began way back in the Obama administration. And where did that start? That started from a report by the Economic Innovation Group called Unlocking Private Capital to Facilitate Economic Growth in Distressed Areas. And the bill that actually helps it go through was an initial bill called Senate Bill 293. Interestingly, in Senate Bill 293, it demonstrated that the designations for opportunity zones would be similar to have success in geographic targeted developments such as Pramazones. So Pramazones again were incorporated into the legislation in the Investing in Opportunity Act back in 2016, 2017, and into the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which became opportunity zones. And of course, the National Coalition of Pramazones prepared a fantastic one-page document to highlight where all those opportunity zones exist throughout the country and Pramazones. So you can show that how the Pramazones were very good about capitalizing on the designations for opportunity zones. So then on June 15th, 2017, we actually ended up getting another OMB memo, which was M1726. And M1726 paused some of the reporting requirements that were in the earlier M1623. And some of those reporting requirements were about offering which programs were going to offer preference points, not necessarily which ones to tell them to stop offering preference points, but just to pause the reporting on it, and on which and also on which grants were awarded. HUD laid out a comparison memo. So we talked about what was in the M1623 memo versus the M1723 memo that paused or rescinded certain aspects of some of the reporting requirements to the White House and to the Office of Management and Budget. This included as well as suspending requirements to report on the programs that offer preference and any awards that were awarded, but not necessarily pausing offering the preference. In addition, it talked about that OMB would resume the reporting on the awards in fiscal year 18 and consider whether to resume reporting requirements beyond that time period. So now I'm going to jump into 2018. And at that time, we held at HUD our first urban Pramazone convening, and we invited our friends from the USDA to attend as well. This is the first time we brought all the Pramazones together. And at the time, you know, it was interesting, we were able to look at some of the data from the Pramazones that have been submitted in reporting requirements. And some of the interesting data I wanted to share with you was just some of the data that we had at that time regarding the grants that Pramazones were receiving. And so it was really essential for us to notify at that time and to understand how important it was that Pramazones were leveraging federal resources. They were leveraging the federal grants and programs across the country that were for Pramazones. We ended up having an amazing dashboard at HUD that allowed us to look at the investments over time by Pramazone and how that looked. And some of the interesting facts about that, for example, was it shed light to the last administration that Pramazones are not just about HUD, right? Or the Pramazones are not just about USDA. Pramazones leverage all different federal grants and programs from across the federal government. And again, this is just looking at the federal grants and programs that are part of the urban Pramazones. You can see Department of Labor, Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Agriculture were some of the bigger areas where urban Pramazones were getting their federal grants. In addition, we looked at that over time to see where they are, which Pramazones were getting grants from which federal agency, again, helping to shed additional light on how the federal government was either responding to or providing resources to Pramazones. Part of this also looked at whether or not the preference points, a lot of Pramazones were using the preference points, and whether or not those preference points could we determine, were they making a difference? Were those the grants that most Pramazones were getting awarded? Were those the grants that most Pramazones were applying for? And you can see there's a pretty good a segment at this time of the number of grants awarded versus applying for versus the one that received preference. Again, you'd have to match to see how many awarded, which were the ones with preference, but you can see there's kind of similar trends around that. And again, we were able to look at it also by rounds, by each round. And of course, this was 2017, so we were just newer into the rounds 2 and 3. And this is just 1 year of investment, not cumulative. Also at that meeting, we were fortunate because we had a team at George Washington University take a look at readying chromosomes for evaluation. You know, many people say, well, haven't we evaluated chromosomes and how they're doing and what could be done? It's very complex, but we did have some analysis done, and we talked about these current themes of how chromosomes could be looked at, how future evaluations could happen in chromosomes, and how could a national evaluation look. And this looked at the different types of evaluations, experimental, quasi, looking at theories of change, theories of action, and also taking a look at other analysis of other place-based initiatives such as promise neighborhoods and choice neighborhoods. So some methodology was created around looking at some of the chromosome goals, how they were coded, themed, and then conducting a set of interviews. And interestingly, as this team put together and looked at the various chromosomes logic models and looking at their inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes, some general themes actually emerged from it. And so what I wanted to share from that time was some of the findings, just to get you kind of up to speed and recall that. So around those themes were some frameworks, some analysis that was done. And so some quantifiable measures were looking at, like, what was the commonality in the number of inputs versus the activities that were measured versus the outputs versus the outcomes measured. And you can see here that there were quantifiable outcomes that were measured that were consistent across many of the frameworks for chromosomes. In addition, there was a theme analysis that was done and looking at the various themes of HUD's definitions that we used for measuring data collected from national data sets being A, B being kind of data sets that are at the local level, but collected at the local level, but reported on nationally, group level C data and group level D data, which is more survey level data. And part of this then looked at the outputs of the themes of whether it was around housing, job assistance, job training, youth intervention programs, where those commonalities were around the frequency of the frameworks that include that, or what policy areas it covered. In addition, we looked at some of the outcomes as well to see if there were some consistent themes around that and the grouping of data around that to help us develop, could there be a framework for evaluating chromosomes? And again, the last section was looking at the common goals around affordable housing, education, environmental and health aspects, the business environment, job access, and then around health and safety and crime in communities. And so in summary, what we realized that there were the 4 most common measurements across all the chromosomes were these 4. Interestingly, unemployment rates, home ownership rates, health insurance covered, and housing burden. Again, this was at that point in time. In addition, we talked about other data that would need to be collected to make sure that it matched up with other aspects that were common across the outputs and outcomes. High school graduation rates, crime rates, and healthy foods access. In addition, interviews were conducted, and the interviews led to a discussion around what other areas of measurement could be used. So the final recommendations from that report were to reconsider the purpose of the frameworks, give a feedback loop so that we could continue to look at how to evaluate, kind of recommend some single outcome measure for focus areas, and streamline some reporting of the documentation on evaluation, and then consider what they call a difference in difference design, because there are many differences in each of the chromosomes. In addition, at that event, we talked about what the most important aspect of the preference points was. And this was at the chromosome convening that we held in DC. And again, it was identified that chromosome preference points meant everything to chromosomes. In addition, we rated them on importance of 1 to 10. You can see how important priority consideration to chromosomes, that was extremely important. How important is it to keep your partners engaged? Clearly, it was very important to chromosomes to keep preference points and keep people engaged. Also, what were the federal agencies that people were most interested in working with the most? So you can see here, you know, again, it's really important to show how all these chromosomes are leveraging the resources of various federal agencies, but our partners at AmeriCorps. Department of Education, Labor, Commerce, HHS, you can see were really important at that survey we did at that point in time. In addition, looking at which order of or most interested in learning more about. Interestingly, Treasury, which was at the bottom of the other one, and others, Department of Transportation, was ones that people were most interested in learning about. And Corporation for National Community Service was at the bottom because people obviously knew more about that and not having more information. But again, continuing to share what our federal partners can do to help promozones. And then what kind of technical assistance would you like? Peer exchange is really important. Grant forecasting is really important. Training and data networks. And then lastly, one of the questions asked is, what do your partners see as the greatest benefit of promozones? Preference points, support, partners, collaboration. You can see at that point, the people that were in attendance, the key things that people highlighted at that time. And then in September 2018, HUD was able to secure some federal assistance funding, and we conducted an evaluation and framework training session. There were several sessions, as well as a handbook that was created and several videos to help promozones kind of create their own unique data and evaluation framework. At the same time, we're seeing a change in the administration. What was interesting is we saw then the introduction in the appropriations bill of the language to ensure that promozone designation agreements that were administered by HUD continued. And so we saw that language in the appropriations bill continue for several years. And of course, we're waiting to see the appropriations bill for fiscal year 22, but for several years, that language continued to be in the appropriations bill. And part of that was because HUD and the USDA had entered into designation agreements with the promozones to have codified documents to talk about the efforts. There are differences between the two designation agreements, but the key here is really that there are those designation agreements. And again, as I meant, whoops, I went sideways there. In addition, in February 2019, there was an initial implementation assessment report that was issued by HUD's Office of Policy Development and Research that talked about how promozones initially started, the structure of them, how the importance of having both the promozone lead organization, community partners, working with AmeriCorps Vistas, working with the community liaison, and then working with our federal partners around providing the benefits to promozones that were envisioned from when the promozones launched. In May 2019, again, our partners at Jobs for the Future issued an amazing report on technical assistance. And this again is the benefit of having federal staff or federal partners who you're going to be hearing about throughout this week provide information about their grants and resources to assist promozones to leverage the funding that's available. So now we're going to move into 2020. In 2020, in the Biden administration, they issued 49 Build Back Better platforms. And so these platforms covered and plans cover everything from climate and energy to coalitions to domestic policy, education, healthcare, jobs in the economy, women, young Americans, older Americans, veterans, and military families. And this is just a crosswalk of all those different plans and how they're leveraged across many of the policy areas that promozones also operate in addition to that as well. And in December 24th, 2020, the National Coalition of Promozones published and issued a letter to Erich, who at the time was the HUD transitional person for the Biden administration. She's now with the Domestic Policy Council in the White House. And they came up with a series of recommendations to reinvigorate the promozone initiative during the Biden-Harris administration. So again, using the coalition, all of you on the line today and this week to be a conduit of the work, renewing the dedication of HUD and USDA, going back, looking at those memorandum that I shared earlier, those C3POs of the Office of Management and Budget saying, what should we be looking back, moving back and looking at? Partnering with promozones on evaluation and data collection. Again, going back to looking at some of the research that I shared that HUD had provided technical assistance around, and our part in collaboration with our partners at USDA and some of the framework that we got from the Georgetown University. Offering to extend promozones by 4 years, coordinating promozones and opportunity zones, and then potentially offering more rounds of promozones, or what would that look like? And then trying to come up with another council or interagency group that would be working in the White House to help to work with promozones. So I can report on some of the stuff today that I can like to share with you. In addition, what's been really interesting is to watch the research, as shared by Secretary Vilsack and shared by ADS Perez, things happen over time, right? Communities over time, many things have gone on. And interestingly, Raj Chetty in his research has also changed over time, and the fact that he's able to get even more data to talk about how important zip codes are, how important places are, and how important this is. And he's presented a lot of this data in his more recent research to the Biden administration. And it's really helping to look at moves to opportunity, what that looks like, and barriers to neighborhood choice. And part of the effort that they're doing is actually collecting some private sector data that has never been collected before at some really interesting levels around looking at, is this economic recovery really helping and exceeding in all places? Is it helping only the high wage workers, or the low wage workers being affected the most by what's happening with the recovery? And it's fascinating research that will help us and the administration to understand better what's happening in all the communities, including in trauma zones. And so part of that, I want to share a video about his most recent research, because I think this will shed light on going back to the very earlier video with President Obama talking about place and zip codes.
I think we all ultimately want the same thing for our children. That is a shot at the American dream. It's the idea that no matter where you started in life, you have a shot at climbing up and achieving success. I think it's the central idea that draws immigrants like myself to come to this country. My parents grew up in very low-income families in India. America was a place that transformed their lives. And through my own personal experience, I've seen how the effects of that have cascaded across the generations. But if we look today, despite the fact that the American economy is one of the strongest economies in the world, children today, especially children who grow up in lower income families, don't have very good odds of going on to achieve a higher standard of living than their parents. And so I went on to become an economist to try to understand why these differences were emerging. So in order to study issues of equality of opportunity, you fundamentally need data that allows you to follow people across generations. Big data. That is proven to be extremely difficult in social science. But a critical breakthrough came in 2010 when my colleagues at Harvard and I gained access to anonymized tax, census, and social security records, information from the government that would allow us to map the roots of poverty and inequality in our society. We realized that we had really struck upon a gold mine of information. As we began to spend more time with the data, the thing that we were amazed to see was that the roots of economic opportunity lie at a very local neighborhood level. Specifically, we found that there were high opportunity neighborhoods where we see kids go on to have high rates of college attendance, high levels of earnings. Then going down to the low opportunity neighborhoods, there were big differences in terms of children's outcomes. Digging further, we looked at families that moved across places, and we found that moving to a higher opportunity place earlier on in your childhood dramatically improves your life outcomes. And so these data show the geography of upward mobility across the United States. And I realized this could really change the course of lives in America.
My name is Nikki Malapas, and I am a single mother to my 3-year-old son, Theo, in Seattle, Washington. Shortly after Theo was born, we were living with my cousin, and my immediate concern was the area itself. It was not ideal for raising a child. There were not so many parks or playgrounds or preschools. That was very hard.
We want to be a country that has opportunity for everyone. And I think oftentimes there's the assumption that more expensive neighborhoods are just better. But what we see with the data is that that isn't always the case. We're seeing neighborhoods that might be relatively poor, but actually have really good neighborhood cohesion, where low-income kids actually do really well. And so what we did was start working directly with the housing authority in Seattle and King County, where some families have access to housing choice vouchers. But what we see is that low-income families who use vouchers oftentimes end up in high poverty neighborhoods with low opportunity for the kids who grow up there. And so we're bringing the data to the table and using housing counselors, help recruiting landlords, additional housing services to make sure that families actually have access to these areas and these opportunities.
I found out about the Seattle Housing Voucher Program. After I got my voucher, there was a program, CMTO, Creating Moves to Opportunity. They gave me a tour of the areas they were concentrating on. We saw parks, playgrounds, schools. It was a great way to see the neighborhoods that have the best opportunities for raising families. This is my little casa. Okay. Having our own place feels really good. There's quite a few daycare centers around here. I know there's a good elementary school just up the street. I mean, I love this area.
What we're finding from this experiment is truly amazing. Some of the biggest impacts I've ever seen as a social scientist. Had Nikki stayed in the neighborhood where she lived before, our data showed that Theo's prospects would be dramatically lower than what they are now. Of course, you can't move everyone out of low opportunity areas to higher opportunity areas, but by using modern data, we can systematically study which types of places appear to produce better outcomes for kids, and we can learn lessons about how we replicate those environments in lower opportunity areas and give many more children from low-income families opportunities to succeed. And so the beauty of this research, what I find inspiring about it, is that it points to real solutions that can change people's lives.
I always wanted Theo to have a great education, and because of this program, I really do feel good about his future. Now he has opportunities that I never dreamed I could give him.
So what I wanted to share with that is that, what you're doing is you're creating those neighborhoods of opportunity. You're creating those neighborhoods where residents can stay, they can live, they can excel, they can exceed. And that's what the whole goal of Promozones is all about. And so where are we today with Promozones? So we know that we have the four key benefits. We have federal staff on the ground. So HUD and USDA continues to support having federal staff on the ground to help. We know that HUD is continuing to work with USDA and having monthly meetings to talk about Promozones. We also have HUD staff, HUD staff is in the Office of Field Policy and Management, and then USDA staff is in the Office of Rural Development. HUD recently issued a Federal Register notice for renewing the Promozone reporting and is in the process of redesigning the Promozone website that covers all the Promozones, both urban and rural and tribal. And HUD also had created some working groups working with the National Coalition around communication, initiative integration, onboarding and turnover, and technical assistance. Over for the AmeriCorps Vista program, they've changed their name from the Corporation of National and Community Service to AmeriCorps. But one of the things that we were very fortunate of getting was that back in January 2020, AmeriCorps actually made a commitment to continuing to support AmeriCorps Vistas. This is the highlight on the right that shares that I'm writing to notify you that AmeriCorps Vista will extend the commitment of making AmeriCorps Vista resource available to communities in Promozones for another 5 years, so covering the full 10 years of the designation. The next benefit was preferred access on and technical assistance. So unfortunately, this did change. And the reality of it is that preference points did diminish significantly on most federal grants. HUD actually continued to offer Promozone preference points for most of our competitive grants after a short brief period where we did not as well. Some federal agencies do continue to offer some preference points on some Promozone grants, but definitely not as much as what we had in the beginning. However, there are opportunity zone benefits that are offered on over 420 grants and programs and over 500 grants to date. But again, looking back at one of those key benefits from zones that was shared was really having that uniqueness of having those preference points for zones. And then the last was tax incentives that have been enacted by Congress. And so this last piece ended up being, as I shared before, the opportunity zones that continue to provide billions in private capital in distressed communities, and having a large number of social impact investors entering the market and working with zones. And our federal partners continue to offer technical assistance around those tax incentives. And so I want to share a few of those resources. Of course, HUD has offered both two toolkits on opportunity zones to help leverage. We've also offered a couple different webinars for tribal communities, for public housing authorities, and for multifamily properties. There was a 3-day webinar series on opportunity zones and leverage them using best practices from across the country that we held in December. In May of this year, we had HUD and our Office of Native American Programs hosted an Opportunity Zone webinar series. It was part 2 of a 3-part series. So the 3rd webinar will be coming up, but again, on opportunity zones with tribal communities. And then in June, we had a series of 3 events, one a West Coast event, a Midwest event, and a Southeast event, walking through opportunity zones, especially around social impact investing and working with communities to make sure that communities are at the center of opportunity zones. The marketplace, as you know, for opportunity zones continues to expand. The data that we have is very limited, but Novogradac does collect data. We know this number is substantially lower than the total that's out there, but we can see there's a big focus on residential commercial properties with the number of operating businesses, while small on the right, it continues to grow pretty dramatically. We continue to see funds being raised in opportunity zones and accelerating month by month of what's been reported. Again, we see investments across the board in affordable housing, workforce housing, office development, mixed use buildings, retail, residential, commercial. A lot of the funds now are focused on single city versus before they were nationally focused. So we're seeing a lot more funds that are focused on local areas with local capital raise that are actually raising the money locally and investing locally. Distribution across the country and places that we see. Interestingly, of course, a lot of it's geared to the higher population states, but there are some cities and states that are doing an amazing job of leveraging the incentive to attract capital that are places that you would not expect and leveraging the resources. The fund sizes themselves, while there's a lot of funds that are very large, actually most of the funds are smaller now. So a majority of the funds are less than 10 million, which means that it's for smaller projects that are invested in locally, even though there's a lot of very large funds that have a lot of big dollars in them. In addition, our partners at AmeriCorps have invested in using AmeriCorps Vistas to help places in the country to use AmeriCorps Vistas for their opportunity zones, including in Louisiana around environmental justice. And our partners at the Economic Development Administration recently awarded a grant to the University of Utah and Sorensen Impact to develop a rural playbook for opportunity zones. Interestingly, the playbook was just published last week. So the Rural Opportunity Zone and Recovery Playbook just came out, and I'm hoping we can do a webinar for all of you to give more insights about that and then the work they did, because I think this will be really useful for our rural and our tribal promise zones to hear more about how to leverage rural opportunity zones and use it for economic recovery. So we'll be working with the team from Sorensen Impact to present a webinar for you on that. Again, our partners at USDA have been working with Indiana and Purdue University around their opportunity zones as well. Our partners at the EPA have actually expanded the efforts of investment prospectuses and developed a community prospectus that can also be used to align to help the communities excel. In addition, our partners at the EPA and partners in the private sector have issued several resource guides around promise or opportunity zones, including the CDFA talking about their Build Back Better plans for what they envision for opportunity zones. Again, here's just 2 of those guides from the EPA on strategies for engaging investors and leveraging them. Again, that private investment side of what was envisioned with promise zones. There also was a recent webinar that was just held in July for attracting investments to rural opportunity zones with our partners with the EPA. So you'll continue to see these webinars on how to leverage that resource. You'll be hearing later in the week from USDA about their opportunities and their rural development programs. And then you'll also be hearing from the EDA about their recent grants and their NOFAs that have been released that are going to be really instrumental as part of the Build Back Better initiative and our American Rescue Plan. You'll hear about their Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, their travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation, and their other grants and programs. In addition, HUD has updated several of our guidance documents around opportunity zones and our community development block grant funding, or Section 108 program. We just hosted a webinar last week on using Section 108 and housing trust funds with opportunity zones, and tomorrow will be a case study on one of those examples. This just shows how HUD programs and grants are really focused around place-based work, and that will continue as we are refining and looking at what's happening in PROMA zones. I'm going to skip this slide, but the last thing I wanted to do is talk about kind of the vision. So in June 2021, the Urban Institute and Policy Link issued a paper called Designing the Next Generation of Place-Based Policy. And in there was a discussion about the more recent ones that have been done with interagency collaboration that is talking about PROMA zones, what you heard about Partnership for Sustainable Communities or Strong Cities, Strong Communities, several of those that were done in the earlier administration. I wanted to share with you a list of resources and articles about PROMA zones that are written on a national scale from many of the partners. You can see many were written by Erich, who's in the Domestic Policy Council, but here's a good history of kind of those key documents about research around PROMA zones all the way through 2020. So what's next? What's on the horizon for PROMA zones? I'm just going to kind of capture it in one slide here, and then I'll close it out and take questions here. But really the key thing here is for all of the PROMA zones to continue to be able to leverage the American Rescue Plan Act funding. So the ARP funding is going to be vital to the work that you do. Continue to leverage your opportunity zone funding as much as you can for that private investment. But also, PROMA zones are having a major impact on the development of new place-based initiatives and under consideration in this administration. So there's, you heard Secretary Vilsack talk about a new Rural Prosperity Initiative, or Strikeforce 2.0. Much of it is modeled and being considered after the great things that PROMA zones are doing and how to build them in. Another one, the Thriving Communities Initiative, that could be built into the budget reconciliation, which is a DOT, EPA, HUD initiative. Again, how can PROMA zones leverage these new place-based initiatives, and several others that are under consideration, all of which are looking for PROMA zones because you've been the longest standing initiative that continues to this day to learn and leverage from. And all of you in this room or in this Zoom room or conference room here, a virtual conference room, are instrumental in helping with that. In addition, leveraging these new funding sources and potential new funding sources. So I don't know if many of you realize, but in this year's budget, there's community project funding and federally designated spending, or earmarks, right? So both congressmen and congresswomen and your senators actually put forward a set of community project funding in your communities to get federal funding from directly for their projects. There's also new funding that's coming out in the budget. In addition, as Secretary Vilsack mentioned, the Build Back Better funding in the American Jobs Plan that's going through budget reconciliation right now. And all of this with a strong focus on racial justice, climate justice, housing justice, to really build back better our communities. So when I talked about the community funded projects, here's just a list, and you can go through and look and click on these from all the federal agencies and all the certification letters of all the projects that are being funded through these earmarks. So for example, just at HUD alone, in our community project funding, in that proposed in the House, our budget is with transportation and HUD together. There's 982 projects getting funded, over 1.4 billion. In the Senate side, there's 2,389 projects, over 9.5 billion that's being funded. And these are direct projects to organizations and places. So this document is online. This is just one page of the many page documents from the U.S. House of Representatives, and you can see that the transportation projects, from pedestrian bridges to building out trails to bus transportation, and then at HUD you can see stuff about building homeless prevention units or anything that's dealing with economic development. And of course, there's a lot of these projects. At HUD, we have 723 from the House. which is around 934 million just on economic development initiatives. On the Senate side, again, I mentioned there's 9.5 billion that's coming over 2,386 projects. Those yet haven't been designated between which ones are HUD and transportation, but all the projects have been listed online. So you can see all the projects that your senator has been proposed to get funding and the millions of dollars that go to specific projects. And just so you know, on September 14th, the first of the votes took place. The House Financial Services Committee passed the legislation for HUD funding. What I wanted to point out just on, this is just one federal agency, and I mention it because I work at HUD, but you can see here, these are all the funding levels that will be increased for either new funding or potential funding. For example, one funding program on here I wanted to make you aware of is that there is a potential for 7.5 billion. It says new HUD program to restore and revitalize communities. So again, there's going to be new funding out there that will be available for Promozones to leverage. And so it's just making sure you stay abreast of these new funding opportunities, increases in funding opportunities with your community liaison. And all about this is really kind of focused with the administration on building wealth in communities, moving from an older community development system to this new system of how do we ensure that those places that we talked about from the very beginning, a zip code should not determine someone's outcome. And so if someone is living in those communities, how can we build those communities to be places of opportunity, as Raj Chetty brilliantly stated in his most recent research, so that we can continue to expand on the work that was envisioned back when Promozones had started. And so with that, I'll stop here and I'll turn it back over to the committee members here to see if there's any questions.
All right, Eric, thank you again. We're going to move forward. Sandy, we're going to let you step up and we will move forward with Sandy on our Promise and Welcome.
Thank you so much, Silas, and thank you, Eric. The 22 different Promise Zones across this nation representing all sorts of individuals wanted to say hello and welcome folks to our federal convening. And we're going to get a shout out for those that have been able to stay on the call. Going to call on the first one, round one, is Los Angeles. Elder, if you're there, unmute. As a matter of fact, all Promise Zone coordinators, go ahead and unmute so that we can call on you.
Hey everyone. Thank you, Sandy, for the introduction, and Eric, great presentation as always. And thanks for everyone for putting this awesome week together, the planning team. So yeah, my name is Elder Sanabria. I'm with the Mayor's Office of Economic Opportunity. I've actually been working with the LA Promozone now for 5.5 years, I think. It's since 2016. So on behalf of the city of Los Angeles, I do want to welcome everyone to this convening for the week. Thank you.
Excellent. And now we have from round one, Philadelphia.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Brown. I have been coordinating the West Philadelphia Promise Zone since 2020. And on behalf of our lead aid entity, the Office of Community Empowerment and Opportunity, and Philadelphia, the city of brotherly and sisterly love, welcome to the 2021 federal convening. Thank you.
Thank you. And now round one, San Antonio.
Oh, hello, everyone. My name is Mariela Ozuna, and I've been coordinating for our Promise Zone for 3 years. On behalf of our lead entity, San Antonio for Growth on the East Side, and the City of San Antonio East Side Promise Zone, I welcome you to the 2021 federal convening.
And from, Oklahoma, the Choctaw Nation.
Hello, thank you all for joining. It made me very happy to see a lot of our community partners as part of this, and I hope it was beneficial to you. But from the great Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, we welcome you to the national convening this year. I'm Sarah Jane Smallwood Cock. I'm a tribal member and have worked for the nation coordinating the Promise Zone since inception in 2014. Yako Key.
And Kentucky, that's me. Hi, y'all. I'm Sandy Kurt. I've been working as the Promise Zone coordinator since 2014. And on behalf of our lead entity, the Kentucky Highlands Investment Corporation, I bid you welcome and enjoy our convening. Our next one is a second round, and it was the city of Camden. Is there a representative of Camden on the line?
I'm here, Sandy. This is Candace Jefferson. I've been coordinating the Camden Promise Zone since 2015. And on behalf of the City of Camden, Office of the Mayor, welcome.
Wonderful. And round two, Hartford. Is there anyone from Hartford on today's call? And we'll move on. And then in round two, we had the fine city of Indianapolis. Anybody from Indianapolis on the call?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Benton, and I have been coordinating our Indy East Promise Zone since our designation in 2015. So on behalf of our lead entity, the John Bonner Neighborhood Centers, welcome to the 2021 Federal Convening. I'm really looking forward to an exciting and informative week and learning with y'all.
Excellent. All right, round two, Minneapolis. Is there anyone from Minneapolis on the call?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Ann Learson in the city of Minneapolis. I've been Promise Zone coordinator since 2015 when we got our designation. And I want to welcome everyone from the city of Lakes. It is raining here today, and we're happy to have the rain and glad to have you all here on our national convening.
Thank you. Round two, Sacramento.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julius Austin, and I am also a part of the awesome planning team that's putting on this convening. So looking forward to see you all in future sessions. But I have been with the Sacramento Promise Zone coordinating and directing the daily operations under the ultimate leadership of Tyrone Roderick Williams since 2017. And I do that in partnership with our awesome federal liaison, Dr. Michael Huff, and our amazing AmeriCorps Vista members. And currently my Vista member is Hannah Penner. I'm going to give her a special shout out. And on the behalf of our lead agency, which is the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, I want to welcome you to our federal convening and look forward to seeing you in future sessions.
Thank you. Round two, the St. Louis Promise Zone. Oh, we lost St. Louis. How about those fine folks at the Pine Ridge Nation? Okay, we're now down to our rural South Carolina Promise Zone.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Becky Byer with Southern Carolina Alliance, the lead entity for the South Carolina Promise Zone. Welcome.
Thank you, South Carolina. We are now looking at our round three, and this is going to be Atlanta.
Hi, greetings from Atlanta. My name is Johnny Lattimore. I am the HUD Community Liaison. I've been with the Promise Zone since 2017, and I also bring you greetings from our lead partner, the City of Atlanta.
Wonderful. Okay, we now have the Evansville Promise Zone.
Hi, I'm Silas Matcham, the director of the Evansville Promise Zone. I bring you greetings from our lead agency, Echo Housing Corporation, as well as our lead partner, the City of Evansville. Myself and our federal liaison, Andrea Ikior, and our Vista members are glad that you are here, and we hope that you continue to participate the rest of the week.
Thank you. Okay, our Nashville Promise Zone. Is there anybody on the call representing Nashville today? In that case, we'll move on to San Diego.
Hi, everyone. Greetings from sunny San Diego. My name is Xiomali Cio Crespo, and I've been the Promise Zone Program Manager for almost a year now, since last October. So on behalf of the city, the lead agency here, City of San Diego Economic Development Department, I welcome you all to our federal convening and really looking forward to connecting with you all.
Excellent. And then from the south part of Los Angeles.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zahira Mann, and welcome. Wonderful to be here with all of you. I've been coordinating our Promise Zone since 2021, and on behalf of Slate Z, I welcome all of you to the 2021 Federal Convening of Promise Zones.
Excellent. And heading on up the coast, we have the folks at Spokane.
Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Metlow. I've been coordinating our Promise Zone since 2016, and on behalf of the Spokane Tribe, I'd like to welcome you to our 2021 Federal Convening.
Wonderful. Then across a few states into our Great Plains, we have the pride of the Great Plains. Do we have Miss Erin on?
Hi, I'm here. Thank you, Sandy. I'm Erin Belgard. I've been the Promise Zone coordinator since September 27, 2017, when we signed our agreement. And what's unique about our Promise Zone is we have 2 tribes that are in North Dakota, Turtle Mountain Reservation and Spirit Lake Nation. And we have our USDA rep, Jill Hawkinson. She's been a very special friend to all of us. So thank you for having me and welcome.
Thank you. Okay, and then to the Caribbean, we have the fine folks of Puerto Rico. Is there anyone from Puerto Rico on the line?
Yes, thank you, Sandy. Hi, hello to all. I'm Nilda Marchand, and I've been coordinating our Roosevelt Roads Promise Zone since our designation in 2016. I was recently appointed executive director of our lead entity, the Local Redevelopment Authority for Roosevelt Road. So I'll be passing on the baton to a new Promise Zone coordinator in the following months. So I'll keep you posted. On behalf of our lead entity, the Local Redevelopment Authority for Roosevelt Road, and our VISTA members, I welcome you to our 2021 Federal Convening. Thank you.
Thank you. And from Southwest Florida, the beautiful white sandy beaches, is Margaret on the line?
Yes, I'm here. I'm Margaret Worsley, and I have been coordinating the Southwest Florida Promise Zone since 2016. Our lead agency is the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council. And on behalf of the lead agency and our Promise Zone, I want to welcome all of you to this convening. And thank you so much to the planners who put it together. It's been wonderful.
Excellent, excellent. And with that, Mr. Host and Mr. Moderator, I turn the session over to you guys for those last minute reminders so that we can have a fantastic convening week.
All right, thank you so much. I've shared the screen so you can see our awesome session overview. I want to verbally thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Erich Yost for setting the bar high and leading the efforts into great federal sessions we'll have about 20 agencies represented in either presentations or panel discussions. You can see the schedule on the screen here. We have an awesome array of topics, including economic stability, health and healthcare, building an equitable green economy. We also are going to hear from members of the White House. So please join us. And I'll stop sharing and turn it back over to our awesome host. Silas Matcham will close us out.
Thank you, Julius, for that update. We do appreciate everybody for coming out and participating. We hope that you continue to participate with us the rest of the week as we move forward with the National Promise Zone Coalition. Until then, we will see you tomorrow, and we hope to continue to bring you some information that we believe that all our communities need. Thank you for participating, and we'll see you on later presentations.